maybe now the city can catch up with replacing them?
And that takes money too. And somebody to convince these political muckety mucks that it's worth doing.
That is the conduct of a sex offender. Her license plate is 5WUB as in boy, 715. It's impossible audible activity. And it is as targeted as the fake sun being over the apartments for over 9 hours in the day. And it is while this sex offender knows that my panties were just down, my legs spread open, genitalia exposed. And it's also the pattern of a predator that is communicating a threat. Walking outside right now to monitor. Let's get the coward.
Good morning.
It's crossing path and engineer light monitoring.
Do what?
With the Ontario police that were monitoring my genitalia as well. Okay, doing so, males and females monitoring my genitalia. Tracy Banks is monitoring with strangers that are monitoring my genitalia. The Ontario police are stalking in a helicopter. The Ontario International Airport is stalking in planes. Demons are pacing, crossing path, while his shadow's moving across the wall. Okay, that's impossible light activity, and so is this. While you're hearing the ceiling cracking and somebody walking downstairs, that's not the explanation for impossible audible activity. That's called crossing in path. So let's get the license plate of this sex offender. Again, that's the third party with license plate 5WUB715. They derive pleasure from sexually violating in order to obstruct justice. The third party accessing the vehicle. I've already documented all these license plates. They're all being prosecuted together. Okay, but accessing the vehicle and using the alarms as a means of audible activity 077XV handicap. Walking into the apartment. I want you to see my shadow here. There's my shadow over there. Here's my shadow right here. Here's my shadow right here in the center. That's not caused by ordinary light. Okay? What just went on in the bathroom was a matter of public information. You got a bunch of demons pacing around in the parking lot, pacing around on Vine and G Street, monitoring inside of 7-Eleven, where my genitalia is a matter of public information, and the entity that is hostile to being prosecuted under existing HUD law. As I do my research under existing federal laws with regard to prosecuting the sex offenders who are gang stalking at Woodside, which AVANATH Capital Management is going to be prosecuted for, and this is the evidence of it. I want you see my shadow all the way over there? This is the prosecution under HUD law as well. They're engaged in Title 18 federal stalking. All right, so under VAWA, the VAWA federal legislation passed in 2021 and 2022, under existing federal law, AVANATH Capital Management, Linda Reyes, gang stalking in Plainview under the fake sun. The demon gang stalking in this video in Unit 55. With men and women that I don't know. With the government that's on video stalking right now and on an ongoing basis in the specific environment is going to be prosecuted for engaging in sexual violence in violation of HUD regulation. This is a HUD regulated property. And that plain activity is going to prosecute them. This is existing sexual violence. That plain activity is speaking to the state monitoring my genitalia, being obsessed with my private parts. All right, and this is why the entity flew over gang stalking 3 times in helicopter today, doing so to psychologically torture, trying to stop me from reporting them to the feds, publishing my evidence on the internet, and engaging in the sex offense of monitoring in a bathroom and making sure that you know it by the amplified sound of a ceiling cracking because you're walking up and down the stairs. Walking up and down the stairs. Doing so in the apartment does not create any cracking. Neither does the sun rise and set over one building. Neither do your shadows appear in all manner on the ground and upright, multiple shadows. This is speaking to surveillance of genitalias. While the demons like in number 41 who work for AVANATH, who are going to prison, have custody of minor children. And they practice sexual violence as a way of life. And then they threaten your life with the government that stalks in planes and helicopters. That's why those children are going to be taken from their custody. You've also seen them gang stalking with their parents. They're also losing custody for that. There's no planes taking off here. This is speaking to, again, the prosecution under existing HUD laws. Just like Speaker Companies, Alvarado Gardens, violating federal law, existing federal law, while they're gang stalking. Simultaneity of activity by the people hovering over the apartment complex. They were already here. They were already here. Okay, that sex offender walked out of her apartment and was sitting engaged in surveillance. The simultaneity of conduct is speaking to that. And that's a sex offender that's monitoring together. That's the Ontario International Airport. Alan D. Wapner is a sex offender obsessed with my genitalia. The Ontario International Airport is used as a means of domestic terrorism. not lawful business and relations regarding the business of the city, conducting payments and accepting funds in order to engage in flights to destinations. That was relevant positioning, light activity, and simultaneity of conduct, as I'm referencing sexual violence that children are subject to inside of the facilitating venue of unit number 41. All right, they're gang stalking with the Ontario International Airport. They have children engaging in that, and they're monitoring my genitalia while they're in custody of children. And the simultaneity of my referencing that, the demons that are hostile to it, they engage in things such as bathroom monitoring to threaten you, and they also engage in things such as stalking in planes and helicopters to threaten you and psychologically torture you. But logic dictates, and so do the logistics of the operation of that airport that has Terminal 2 and Terminal 4. The entity, if you pay attention to the audible activity, came out of nowhere. So you're talking about being right over the roof of this property, where all of a sudden you're hearing the plane activity, but it did not originate from a certain destination. It suddenly sounds here as though they're taking off here. That's called stalking with amplified audible activity, which is also the criminal interference with quiet enjoyment, where AVANATH Capital Management is indeed engaged in gang stalking with the state and violation of Title 18 with all of the residents, with their employees, with the public who come onto the grounds just like that sex offender did. Gang stalking, which is not an explanation for the cracking walls and ceiling. That's an inherent violation of quiet enjoyment. That's not how the apartments are created here at a senior citizen complex, by the way, where they're hovering over in planes and helicopters. That's the city of Ontario providing incriminating evidence against it, the federal government. The state is engaged in what is HUD violations with all of the properties in the state of California while they are participating in that federal housing program. And it is inherently in violation of VAWA, V-A-W-A, violence against women, while federal group stalking and monitoring is underway. And that's exactly what Tracy Banks is engaged in as an adult who lives in the apartment, and also based on what is in existing federal law. That's Title 18. So I'm giving you a bare bones legal analysis about what the entity is doing, and as I do so, you're literally looking at them engaging in federal group stalking and monitoring. That Latino male is crossing path. This is somebody that's engaged in surveillance. He wasn't even necessarily inside of any of their apartments. That's the stalking conduct. They sit in their cars. That's why you had somebody sounding the alarm. They were monitoring my genitalia. They are always engaged in that conduct in order to obsessively stalk together. These are psychopaths. Psychopaths have to be removed from access to children. And that's the Latino family in unit number 41. They're all going to prison. And if they're not natural born, they're going to be deported. But they will be removed from the children that are literally their lives are threatened. And they are surrounded by predators who are monitoring my genitalia. So those children are also subject to that sexually violent threat. They're psychopaths and terrorists. They're gang stalking with the city of Ontario, who threatens and psychologically tortures me as I report them to the feds. And that's also why they're going to federal prison. This demon is engaged in monitoring my genitalia. Again, her license is 5WUB715. Were you hearing the amplified plane activity? All right, where you are hearing the amplified sound of the ceiling cracking, which the entity is doing to engage in sexually motivated psychological torture. Oh, I want you to know that I know that you were nude. I knew that you took your panties down right now. I know that you'd like to report that to the feds, so I'm going to do it right now because I was monitoring when you were researching VAWA federal legislation. That's what that audible activity is reasonably communicating. And Tracy Banks is a sex offender monitoring with males and females and the government, her own daughter. And she is a documented sex offender placing cameras inside of my apartment in Los Angeles, California. She is fully engaged in and fully participates and supports the entity, the state, being engaged in what's going on concerning my genitalia, okay? Essentially engaging in what is trafficking on the internet so that the entity can watch me in the nude, unbeknownst to me. And sex offenders like the demons in Unit 41 have access to children while they engage in that conduct together. And they are using the airports, they're using the police departments to engage in that level of surveillance. That's why you have, again, the inexplicable and clear criminal conduct of stalking by commercial planes. And demon-possessed gang stalking pilots are the ones that are crashing planes, murdering people. They're not accidents. And they're a threat to national security while the Ontario International Airport remains in operation. It's going to be shut down. And the entity is going to provide every gang stalking airline, including Delta Airlines, Southwest Airlines, American Airlines, Frontier. You have what is Avianca. You have UPS, FedEx, Amazon, who are demon-possessed gang stalkers in their vehicles, like I documented Amazon today. All right, they're engaging in this pattern of conduct by using commercial planes, and it's absolutely psychotic. But it's also in violation of VAWA, V-A-W-A. violence against women, and that's what the entity is also in violation of HUD, because Woodside Senior Apartments is a HUD property, and everybody here can't even pay their rent while they're gang stalking with the state. That's also violating HUD. Remember, we're going to prosecute the entity. AVANATH is a third party, and the city of Ontario is the state, and they're acting together violating HUD. The state will be prosecuted for that and criminally and incentivizing and contributing to public corruption while doing so. I'm going to publish this on the podcast as well, because this is the I documented essentially over 13 hours of psychological torture while I publish evidence on the internet. This is what the entity is doing on an ongoing basis, doing so by helicopter, doing so by plane, doing so with simultaneity to what it is that I document, doing so in a sexually violent manner because they're hostile, trying to deter publishing evidence, which is again trying to murder the one that is whistleblowing. That's a federal offense in the same way that psychological torture in order to deter publishing and documentation, where the entity is seeking to murder and kidnap you, because that's why you're gang stalking as a police under a fake sun and a fake moon at night. They're doing so in furtherance of the conspiracy to murder and kidnap, which is already established within this particular fact pattern pertaining to the state of California's conspiracy to murder me. All right. It is again 10:03 p.m. That amplified audible activity coincided with audible activity and crossing path and engineered light. That's a sex offender that was already in position to cross path while I was recording on my phone. And then this is what you have as I'm documenting the elements outside. That's really revealing what are the sex offenders that are the city of Ontario, the population itself, that are monitoring my genitalia inside of a facilitating video. It's not a private space. All right. It is again 10:03 p.m. This is the removal of Paul Leon. He's not going to remain as a mayor, and neither is Linda Reyes going to remain outside of federal prison. Neither is Woodside Senior Apartments going to be any more operating under the HUD program, and they're going to be prosecuted on more than one basis under SIIS federal legislation and also under existing federal law with regard to federal stalking that AVANATH Capital Management is intentionally, knowingly, and maliciously in violation of while they are gang stalking with the residents, with their employees, with the public that come onto the grounds. They're the people of the state, and the state that you just saw gang stalking with AVANATH, this evidence is going against the state. It is currently, again, 10:04 p.m. This is P.O.C. And while I'm here, let me just go ahead and reference again. This is with regard to the VAWA legislation. VAWA is what I'm stating if you can't hear. Violence Against Women, the Reauthorization Act of 2021. All right. And so Woodside Senior Apartments, AVANATH Capital Management is in violation of it under more than one subsection based on federal stalking that you just saw the evidence of, and that the pattern of conduct fully establishes. And it is an independent basis of prosecuting the people and prosecuting the state of California and the entire property of Woodside Senior Apartments. All of the employees, they're going to federal prison that work here. The entity in units 33 through 64 are going to federal prison. Tracy Banks is going to a mental asylum for the rest of her life. She's never getting out for trying to murder me for my entire life. And now I'm prosecuting her for it. And I'm also showing how she is acting in concert and relying on the government and relying on the people of the state, like the demons at Woodside Senior Apartments, who are acting in conformity to that. And they do so with a vicious level of malice and with an ongoing show and demonstration of desperation. They're going to prison. They're the AVANATH executives. They're going to compensate with damages. And it is also relevant, as I am now going to also speak to under existing federal law, which is VAWA. They're also in violation of federal stalking itself, but this is a HUD property. They are violating HUD, by the way. When you're engaged in criminal surveillance, domestic terrorism, they're violating the privacy rights, the information regarding the residents, the identification information, social security numbers. All that's public information where the state's gang stalking. I already showed that as I was the property manager at Alvarado Gardens and Speaker Companies. They are an existing violation while they are engaged in federal stalking, criminal monitoring. It's public information, that which is supposed to be private. It is also that which is ongoing while they are engaged in federal stalking, criminal surveillance with the government, all of these angles, including Linda Reyes gang stalking with the state and the people, while they are in violation of Title 18, Section 22618, subsections 1 and 2. This is another area in recognizing their violation under VAWA, Violence Against Women Reauthorization Act, and it would be based on the adult cohabitant. Tracy Banks is gang stalking me. She's criminally monitoring me with the state. And AVANATH Capital Management, I'm arguing that they're doing it with their employees. AVANATH itself is violating VAWA. AVANATH itself, through its employees, through its contractors, through the public, through the government that's gang stalking on the grounds and in the airspace, just like I just captured on video, is violating VAWA while engaging what is an act of domestic violence, gang stalking, which is a threat to your life, okay? This is just prosecuting under existing law. What the Ontario International Airport just did, it's been doing all day long, which I also documented, and so let me just include this in the video here. AVANATH Capital Management, as I began specifically noting when I began a particular project, publishing the evidence regarding the people of the state on the venue of the internet, which is, again, where criminal surveillance is underway. It's not a matter of privacy. Everything happening on the internet is public. You're subject to monitoring by the state. In other words, that's what I mean by public. You have an illusion that there's privacy and there's not. The government is monitoring. The government is monitoring everything that I'm doing, and the government proved that with regard to everything that it was hostile to as I publish it, as I speak to a license plate, as I document and put it on the internet. The entity, through these methods that you just saw right now, again, the people of the state, pacing, pounding, earthquake conduct inside of the apartment. You have, what is the duration of the day? Technically, you're talking about during the 9 a.m. hour until what is present. It's 10 p.m. But I stopped working on that particular project. I use that just as a gauge regarding ceaseless psychological torture, which is not capable of being quantified. But with regard to prosecuting criminally and civilly, the entity is going to compensate for the harms that are inflicted by psychological torture, which is on a 24-hour basis that you cannot quantify. And this is speaking to, again, criminal interference with quiet enjoyment by the entity that's gang stalking with the police, gang stalking with the city airport, which is a inherent threat to your life, gang stalking with the entity that's living at the unit, and while doing so, inherently violating, criminally interfering with quiet enjoyment. And that is for the criminal purpose of what is communicating a threat, because they're monitoring what I'm looking at on the internet. As I review this law, I'm threatened with the notion of monitoring my genitalia, and as I'm walking outside and documenting it, very much the entire entity is aware that my pants and my panties and my genitalia were exposed and everything that happened in the bathroom. That is psychological harm of a sexual nature as well, and the government's going to be prosecuted for it. All right, doing so with impunity. Alan D. Wapner, Paul Leon, they don't care that the airport's being shut down. They don't care that they're being removed from office. They don't care about any so-called constitutional rights. They don't care about the elderly going to prison. Neither do the elderly care about going to prison. Tracy Banks doesn't care about getting locked up either. They don't care. Okay, this is the national security threat. Those demons gang stalking in commercial planes in a manner that is irreconcilable and incongruent with taking off from Terminal 2 and Terminal 4, but yet the audible activity is such that it abruptly sounds over the roof as though they're taking off right here at Woodside. That's the P.O.C. And this is also where the fake sun remains and the fake moon, as you just saw at night. This is where engineer light remains in this apartment all day long. The Ontario International Airport is a threat to national security, and it will be shut down because of its engagement in kidnapping with the city of Ontario, gang stalking with the city, while I've been subject to kidnapping kidnapping by the people, and also because they are engaged in what is domestic terrorism. It's literally a means of funding and systematically engaging in terrorism in the city of Ontario. It is currently 10:10 p.m. All right, this is P.O.C.